Hi everyone, I want to show you a bit of the basics of how to make a follower survive in high GR pushing. This is a clip from 150 solo push with no immortality relic. So there are ways to make the follower survive, and a lot of people might not be aware of this, but it is actually possible to give them other relics like the all skills or the cooldown relic, and that can be quite powerful. In case of the Scoundrel here, I have Slipcast Letter Opener, which is 50% CDR for all the skills, and the Scoundrel has the biggest DPS ability of all the followers, which is the Knight's Veil, which is this little cloud that he casts sometimes, and it gives you a 100% crit chance against enemies in that area, and that is very powerful. And with that relic, he can cast it every 15 seconds instead of every 30 seconds, giving it a massive damage boost and allowing you to deal a lot more DPS overall. You can see here in this laser show with arcane beams and molten ground effects and all that stuff, my Scoundrel is always full HP, and this comes from all the toughness I gave to him, and also a lot of life regen and a lot of life per hit, and the fact that I am wearing an Enforcer gem, and this is kind of the key as well for this build. Now when you're speed farming and typically not really fighting stuff very much, but just like blasting through in like 2 minutes and you're one-shotting everything, then usually neither you or your follower are actually in danger, and it is doable even with builds that don't wear Enforcer, but the 90% damage reduction actually counts for your follower, and this is why it's rather easy to make to survive, but you still have to watch out for some things. I'm gonna show you the setup that I made here for my follower. It is pretty solid but not fully optimized, but basically I've been collecting good ancient pieces, usually some stuff that has a lot of main stat and a lot of vitality and life regen. So I tried to give him a lot of life regen. You can see that he's standing here with 116,000. 40,000 of that comes from the Boots of Disregard, which actually work for the follower, as you can see. So this is quite useful because the Scoundrel especially tends to stand still quite a lot. Other than this, we have the typical items. There's a flavor, there's a nemesis, there's Oculus Ring. Keep in mind that this only works when you don't have unity, because if you put a unity on yourself and the follower, you will share the damage. First of all, that you take to your follower, and also the damage that he takes will be shared to you, and you will die immediately. Because what the immortality relics actually do is they just put their damage taken to 0, so they essentially have infinite toughness, and they don't actually share any of the damage from unity to you. But if they don't have this immortality relic, you will take a lot of damage and instantly die. So be aware of this. Apart from those other key items here, I give him a Lurk's Crown, which gives him more life pool. Not really necessary, but it does help a bit. It's also a very nice roll. And we have the 3-piece Orgulls. So since I don't need any other ring, I gave him Ring of Royal Grandeur, and the 2-piece Orgulls doesn't work for followers, but the 3-piece with 30% elite damage reduction does work. So this is quite nice. The Crimson set here is mostly for stats and a bit of life regen. So 6k life regen is almost another roll. That's pretty nice. The set bonuses other than that don't really do anything. It's only for the Templar where the 2-piece bonus works for the heal ability, but no other ability from followers is affected by cooldown reduction, and the 3-piece doesn't work. Then Archers also doesn't work, it's just for the stats. And also here I just have a random bow that I crafted. This could be optimized. So you can see I have pretty good stuff here. Mostly ancients. I have these 2 augments here. This is just my regular crimson pieces. Essentially, I have way too much vitality on this. Like, this guy has over 3 million life, so it's actually very hard for him to heal up. So even with this high life per second and the life per hit, it would take quite a while for him to get back to full HP. So you don't really need to stack so much life. What's most important is damage reduction and life regen, and then maybe some life per hit, because he also attacks a little bit. But this is totally fine. And you can see here that I have a Mutilation Guard and an Esoteric Alteration socketed on his gear, and they're both level 100. These are the only 2 legendary gems that work on the follower, and they also give him lots of damage reduction. He has 60% against melee, and he has 60% against all elements, and also even more when he drops to low HP, which doesn't really happen very much. So this is the reason to have a little bit of life pool on him, but something like even just 1 million or 1.5 million is totally fine. I have way too much, and there could be like more mitigation, like all res, armor, stuff like that. And if you want to go really ham, you could even go with like a lot of more intelligence gear, for example, to give more all res, and then maybe augment some dexterity if you have too many gems. But you can see now with all this together, he has around 800 million toughness, and that is without the Enforcer bonus. So you see that if you multiply this times 10 from 90% damage reduction, he actually goes to 8 billion toughness. 8 billion toughness is a lot of toughness. That's like triple of what I have on my own character. So you see that this guy gets really tanky, and this is how this works. I haven't really tried like different points with like different gear levels. I just put this together and I saw it works great. So it definitely seems like he is a bit overkill tanky, and he can go with a little bit less than what I have. But just to give you a rough estimate, I have 90% damage reduction, which is the armor damage reduction. It's just displayed differently here. So this comes from all this dexterity mostly. And then we have around like 1.5 to 2k resist on most things, a bit more on physical. So you see here on the resist he has like 80% up to like 87% damage reduction. So this is like the main sources of damage reduction here, along with the 30% elite from the Orgils. And then around 100k life regen with boots of disregard stacked. So essentially, if you can afford it, you can try to get a little bit of like another main stat. So if you're using a Scoundrel, this could be some intelligence. If you're using a Templar, also intelligence maybe. But just make sure you have a main stat at 25k. And in case of the Templar, you also need to get a lot of cooldown reduction everywhere. Because Templar works with cooldown reduction, and his heal ability can be cast like every few seconds. If you give the Templar the cooldown relic, and you stack like 60% cooldown reduction with Crimson and all that stuff on him, like he will cast this like every 4 seconds or something. And the good part is also that it heals you and the Templar with the heal. So you don't actually have to stack so much life regen on him, because he just heals himself very often anyway. For the Enchantress, this whole thing usually makes sense when you give her the all skills relic, because then you can get the 10% element and the 10% cooldown on top of the proc with the attack speed. So she has a lot of really nice stuff. The big problem of that is that she also gains the first row of abilities, which is the Temporal Pulse and the Charm, which usually you don't really want, at least the Charm, because it can really affect the ability to pull enemies together. But especially for speed farming, this is not really a big deal. And even for pushing for some builds, that is definitely doable to get like another bonus here. Keep in mind that you can actually buff your followers, so some builds that have some kind of party utility, like the Inner's Monk for example, have it a bit easier. For example, you see now when I press my Manta, his toughness goes up even more. I don't actually do this, but it does show that the party buffs work. There's also like war cries from especially Frenzy Barb for example, and maybe you have a Numbing Traps passive on your Demon Hunter. So you can kind of consider, you know, maybe some things that not only buff your own toughness, for example the Guardian's Path passive, but you can also try Resolve, because that reduces the monster damage, and that means that also the damage that the follower receives will be reduced. So these are some things to be aware about in case your follower is just barely not surviving, for example, and that can help you. Now obviously not every build is running with Enforcer, but there are actually quite a few. So here's Inner for example, there's a Zunimasa, there's a Firebird most of the time, in solo pushing at least, and there's a bunch of other things. There's even Natalia, Marauder combo, and some other builds that especially revolve around pets and can definitely make use of this. So make sure you do. And there's also some builds where it kind of works even without Enforcer, like Frenzy Barb. If you have a really good follower, potentially with Augment Stow, it might be doable even without the 90% damage reduction. And if you want to find out more about followers, how they work, what emanates, how they interact, etc., we have a big follower post here on Maxwell in case you have not seen that yet. So go check it out as well. So hope you like this video, hope you learned something and it might help you for your own pushes, and I'll see you guys next time.